to talk about it. The feedback I got was, hey, come back to us with a concrete proposal. And the vendor will then poke holes in that. So that's what I'm working on. We're going to come back to you vendors with a more concrete proposal, let you poke holes in it. And lastly, so we looked at normalization of the data. And then there's lots of work in data normalization that we can leverage here. But lastly, just the need to collect raw data. That security tools typically take a policy and they're going to tell us the answer to certain questions. Does this security configuration match that policy? Answer is yes or no. Well, what we really want to be able to do is take a lot of data and put it into a database and compare it against multiple policies. If we want to compare against multiple policies, we need the raw data and then to create a finding for each policy that answers yes or no. Just getting a raw yes or no from a sensor doesn't help us. So that's another area where I think the vendor community is a little bit weak in not giving us that capability. So we published an initial model. We're working on the specifications. We had a big workshop with the vendors. We're going to support the DHS procurement. We are going to eventually provide sort of comprehensive guidance on continuous monitoring. And that's it for continuous monitoring. And so that Ed has time to talk, we have to limit 2:05, right?
Right.
You wanted 10 minutes, right?
10 minutes would be fine. If not a little less, that's fine.
And there's a break afterwards. We can hold them hostage. If you can take that door, Ed, and take this door.
We'll be good.
You can hold them hostage. So that gives me a couple minutes, so I'll take Ed's time, to talk about merging these together. How does continuous monitoring, our reference model then, how does that apply, or does it apply to cloud computing? Okay, similarities. Clouds and typical enterprise networks have diverse security tools. They also may have a multi-tier kind of architecture. However, with clouds, they typically have a single owner, whereas enterprises is very federated usually. Clouds show some elements of homogeneity or an abstraction of homogeneity. Enterprise networks absolutely do not, although they're moving that direction if they're becoming cloudy. Looking at the similarities and differences, I have a hypothesis that the same reference architecture we've created for continuous monitoring can be, for enterprise networks, can be applied to cloud. And if you look at cloud, internally, you need to measure the security posture of the cloud infrastructure. You separately, as a cloud vendor, need to measure the security usage by the customer. Is the customer using the cloud securely? And then is my cloud infrastructure secure? And then externally, you need to report on that. You need to convince the customer that, yeah, my infrastructure is secure, and your usage is secure. But when you're reporting that out, do you really want to give them all your security details? No. So at the top here, we need to collect some raw data. We need to compare it against some policies. Down here, we need to abstract that data and report it out to a customer in a way that doesn't reveal security-sensitive information, or at least not more than we want to. This sounds a lot like a federal government hierarchical need of collecting the raw data, keeping it local, evaluating it, sending results up to a higher tier so people can make management decisions on it. So really, the internal and external needs for cloud are very similar to enterprise networks. We've got diverse security tools, we need to integrate them, we need data normalization, we need tool interoperability, the hierarchical reporting. We need to abstract the data and provide views out to different decision makers or customers. So I argue that the two can work together. Now, so with that, we're going to end. And so closing thoughts. I am sold on cloud. I love cloud. And I think we're going to get there. In an age of reduction in funds, And given the technical maturity of the individual components that represent cloud, I think it's the way to go. But it's a more nuanced answer. What kind of cloud is the right approach? And I'd love to have that discussion with you later on. Continuous monitoring. Thank you. This is a hard problem. In fact, right now, there's a lot of science involved. But are we making progress? Can this be done? I think the answer is yes. If you look at the Security Content Automation Protocol, which I helped start at NIST, we created specifications for how you assess machine state and report on it. And we have over 30 different, I looked recently, over 30 different major security products that conform to those specifications. Some that built it natively into their product, some that just sort of gently instrumented their product to work with the specifications, but regardless, the vendors did it. And the government's using it, OMB is mandating it. So the model is there. We've succeeded in the past. Can we do this again? Absolutely. And with that, I will not take questions. I'm going to let Ed talk. Here. There you go.
Thank you. So I'm going to be very brief, I promise. Try to condense this down into 10 minutes. But I'm Ed from the Systems Engineer with Centrify. We are sometimes called an AD grid product. And by that I mean we extend Active Directory into typically non-Microsoft places. So this is sort of the Centrify vision of the world. And in our center of our world is a directory service, in this particular case, Active Directory. But in any organization, it could be something else. And in there, you're maintaining the identities of users, the identities of machines, and you extend that out to the various platforms that's in your heterogeneous environment. In this next evolution, you're extending this identity out to the cloud computers. And it could be external cloud computers or internal cloud computing environments. Centrify as a company, we kind of have a sort of dual vision because we actually have some of these, like Savvis, for instance, cloud providers as customers. So we see this from two different viewpoints already. In the commercial world, we have some customers that spun up between 20, 30, 40,000 cloud systems already in their environments. And their issues are a little bit different than anything I've heard in the past about management of those systems. So, sort of the cloud security challenges. I don't think there's anything in here that's a surprise. And typically, this is the last definition from Peter, the IIS, where you're providing cloud as an infrastructure. And typically, what happens when you take over a system, they drop you into an environment. You have a template, and on there it's a privilege account and password. It's root. If it's on a public network, you go back to what Peter said. It's basically hostile. And you're at a very basic IP address layer. And from there, you sort of build up onto the system. So where are we in the state of this? This is sort of the state. These systems, the current solutions are incomplete. Obviously, firewalls protect interfaces to VMs. Well, firewalls in and of themselves are labels. They protect based on IP address. They protect on MAC address, which in the cloud is completely virtual. I'm not going to say they're completely useless, but not too far from that. So how can you deal with that? Potentially a VPN. But that's not really perfect either. Because it requires that the hosting provider participate with you, provide a number of services they may or may not do. Probably not. And then authorization controls. You don't really want to come into a system as root. You certainly don't want all your admins coming in as root. That breaks most security models from the get-go. So the idea behind this is to automate